Today's readings challenge us, just as the parables Jesus uses must have challenged his listeners more than 2,000 years ago. And that is really one of the objectives of using parables to teach. A parable takes an image from common life and teases the mind to think more deeply about the lesson being taught. Today we have the images of wheat and weeds. And if I had read the longer gospel, we would have had images of the mustard seeds and images of yeast. All things that would be easily understood by those listening to Jesus. So we need to ask ourselves, what is Jesus trying to accomplish through the use of these parables? The short answer is that he wants us to see the world as God sees it. A very, very tall order. And that is where the challenge lies. You see, we tend to categorize things as good or bad. But our faith and our spirituality run deeper than that, or at least they should. When we hear the story of the wheat and weeds, most of us have little doubt about what Jesus means. We know who the wheat is, don't we? Sure we do. The wheat is ourselves, our family, our friends. You know, the good guys. And the weeds, oh, the weeds. The weeds are people like noisy neighbors, a coworker you don't get along with, or perhaps a troublesome boss. In other words, the bad guys. And I would wager that every one of us would be ready and willing to point out who's who. You know, in the grand scheme of things, we are all weeds. We have all sinned. And as St. Paul says so eloquently, fallen short of the glory of God. Who among us can say that they are exactly the person God created them to be? Because of our human nature, we are always a work in progress. The good news is that God treats us all like wheat. If you have any doubt about it, just look at the cross. God has spared nothing, not even his Son, to teach us and to redeem us. You see, in the eyes of God, there is never any shortage of mercy. This means there is time to let the weeds grow and have their moment in the sun, even if they are always to remain weeds. It also means that we needn't worry that the weeds will overtake them. God provides each of us more than what is needed to guide us in our journey, to help us make the right choices. Holy Scripture continually reminds us of God's love for us and our obligation to love God and our neighbor. It is important for us to remember that God's love for us is not earned. God's love for us is not measured. In a worldly sense, God's love for us is not even sensible. We are called to not only receive that love, but just as importantly, to extend that love to others. Even those, maybe especially those, who we think don't deserve it. Therein lies the challenge of today's gospel teaching.